we need to, if Russian Church should play a role, we need some sort of, I would say, priests coming from local people, not priests.
Yes and no.
Not priests.
But look what Nicholas Kazatkin did in establishing the Orthodox Church in Japan. Look at the great tradition of Russian missionary endeavour in the 19th century into Siberia and into Alaska and so on and so forth. St. Innocent, and all these people, St. Herman of Alaska, they knew how to preach the gospel to cultures quite different from those of a European background. Right? The Russian church has the knowledge, has the ability, has the experience. What it lacks at the moment, it thinks at the moment that by, again, I'm not to be quoted.
Okay.
I understand why Moscow wants to cooperate with Rome on certain issues in Europe that it sees as deeply injurious to European Christianity, whether it's gay marriage or whatever it might be, assisted suicide, all this kind of stuff, all the ethical stuff. And I fully support that. I understand why Moscow's doing that. I'm not neglecting Belarus. I'm just saying I know why Moscow is doing that.
No, I mean it's not a problem because we are under jurisdiction
of course
of Moscow
you are.
as well.
But nonetheless, there's an ethnic distinction to be made. So I understand why that's happening. But if the price of that is that somehow the Orthodox don't engage in direct evangelistic behaviour, then I think it'll be a terrible shame. Because Europe is not going to be re-Christianised by passing resolutions about gay marriage, all this kind of stuff. Believe me, I've been in the Church of England. Ecclesiastics get together, they have conferences, they pass resolutions about this, they pass resolutions about that. The only thing that's going to save Europe is to have the Orthodox Christian faith back inside it. And that's only going to happen when we get Orthodox missionary priests and Orthodox missionary bishops active on the European continent. Not simply serving the Russian diaspora, although certainly doing that, but also, and with us, reaching out to European peoples.
Right. Can I call this? Can I call?
That last bit, yes.
Okay. Of course, I understand, and Orthodox Christian, I fully agree with you on that. But there is a sort of practical problem which can arise. Because in many cases, in many places in Europe, Russian Orthodox Church is heavily dependent on Protestants and Catholics providing places of worship, like different houses, different maybe churches which are provided for rent. In many places, I would say, if you go to Spain, to Italy, even in Britain, say I'm in Scotland now, in the city of Dundee, there is an Orthodox community which has the only place to pray in the chaplaincy of the University of Dundee. And I'm just thinking, maybe it's one of the reasons why Moscow Patriarchate is a bit hesitant about starting a full-scale missionary campaign in Europe. Maybe they're afraid of losing places of worship for Orthodox people.
With the greatest respect. When an Englishman says with the greatest respect, it usually means I'm about to say it's rubbish. That argument is complete rubbish.
Why?
Because if Moscow wanted to, it could invest heavily in building churches in the West. The reality is that Orthodox congregations in the West, whether they're Greek, Antiochian, Russian, Romanian, whatever, are largely, as we are, self-supporting financially congregations. We acquired this building, it belongs to us. Okay? It's not hired or rented or leased from anybody. We started, so there's two aspects to this, this is the first aspect. We started with 15 to 20 people and no money, with me having left the Church of England. Within a year we'd acquired this building. Within 20 years, our congregation has gone up from 15 to 20 people to 200 people. I'm a full-time stipendiary priest. Have we had any financial help from outside? No.
No, you didn't. Oh, this is interesting. Because the Pokrov Church was constructed with the help of a very wealthy Russian man.
This is the second aspect. Greeks, wealthy Greek merchants who came here in the 19th century, built churches like the Greek church on Bury New Road in Salford. Right. So there's always been wealthy Greek, and for that matter, Levantine, Lebanese, So, and doubtless also, although perhaps to a less extent coming after the October Revolution in respect to the for want of a better word, the White Russian presence in Europe, probably often people leaving without very much and not being a very strong financial base. So the Russian presence in Europe in the Soviet period was going to be fairly modest. But there are two aspects. We have shown here how it can be done from ground zero without any financial help from outside whatsoever. But even if that were not possible in any given area, for all the present economic problems and the fall in the oil price and everything else, Russia is not a poor country. And if Russia wanted to put 6 large churches, churches of excellence with missionary priests and with a mix of Slavonic and English in 6 major British cities, and went through all the planning processes to do it, and invested, say, £20 million to make it happen, they could do it if they wanted to.
Well, why they don't want, in your opinion?
Exactly. So the answer is not to be sought on whether it will upset the Protestants because currently we borrow their buildings. That is not the answer. You have to search for the answer elsewhere. All right, I'll ask you, why don't they do it?
Well, I think, I believe there is some sort of problems in the theological mentality of some bishops and priests in the Russian Orthodox Church.
Everywhere.
Who do not see actually substantial differences between Western and Eastern Christianity. And who believe that it really doesn't much matter if a person is in a Catholic Church or in the Orthodox Church. This is a great problem, as I can see. So if they don't see much difference, and if they would like people who are Protestants or Catholics remain in their faith, in their religions, then possibly they will not invest much into missionary campaiges.
Do you think they realise, Sergei, just how few people in the West actually go to church regularly nowadays?
I believe yes. There is an understanding that in most Western European countries, Western Christianity is in great decline. Yeah, there is an understanding.
So how are people going to get the truth unless there are labourers in the harvest and people who are sent?
Well, I would say that probably some bishops would believe that it's a duty of the Catholic and Protestant priests, but not of the Orthodox priests.
I think also, not to be quoted, I think there are political factors here. I think that if Russia was to move into Europe big time, there would be enormous political and religious implications of that. It was well known in the Soviet period that there was a Marxist bookshop in London.
Was it? Was it? I did not know about it.
Yeah. And it was common knowledge that Russia was supporting that economically. It was an instrument of Soviet propaganda in London, whatever. Russia has a long experience. I'm not criticising that, I'm simply observing it as a fact. Russia has a long experience of being able to do things abroad, whether or not people like it or not.
Okay.
And therefore, it's a question of political, social and spiritual will. It's simply a question about whether Russian Christians, and for that matter Greek Christians, and for that matter Antiochian and Romanian Christians, care enough that people know Jesus Christ and find salvation and actually create an Orthodox Christian culture, or whether they really think that people can get the same outcome by carrying on a miserable existence in a Protestant and Catholic entity that is in terminal decline. And at the day of judgment, questions will be asked of Orthodox bishops, not just of how you looked after your own flock, but whether you sought the sheep that was lost. The 99 who are secure, fine. But the good shepherd going over the sheep that was lost? At the moment, they're not going after the sheep that were lost, that are lost.
Well, I have no idea how to persuade.
And I'll tell you something else, and I'll shut up now because I've finished my rant. Everybody talks about Philetism, you know, and all that, and Shambesi, and the reaction to Shambesi, and all that. And I know Shambesi's dead in the water. Everybody knows Shambesi's dead in the water, mainly because Constantinople's model will not work. Because our South American Antiochian bishops have kind of said, well, you know, why should Constantinople always be the president? You know, this nonsense about, you know, Constantinople's role in barbarian lands and everything is pathetic. Right. They didn't say that, I'm saying that. Right? So we've got Philetism, okay, which is an ecclesiological heresy, but we don't know how to deal with it because we have overlapping jurisdictions. 2016 synod, God help us. Anyway, on the other hand, we've got a diasporal mentality, and it's only just recently, Sergei, that I've realised the two are joined and connected at the hip. So long as you have a diasporal mentality, you will always have Philetism. Because if the Orthodox Church thinks that her job in Western countries is simply to be an extension of the Mother Church, ministering to the ethnic Russians in, whether they're temporary workers or long-term residents, in non-Orthodox countries, the conception of Orthodox ecclesiology will necessarily, not in the sense of people wanting it to be, but will necessarily be Philetistic. Because you will consider yourself as ministering to dispersed Russians, Romanians, Lebanese, Syrians, wherever they might be living. Right? So the diasporal mentality automatically, not out of choice, automatically creates the Philetistic heresy. So the only way in which you're going to deal with Philetism is actually deal with the diasporal mentality. Now, nobody's denying that it is the duty and care of an Orthodox Russian bishop or an Orthodox Romanian bishop to look after Russian, Romanian, Syrian faithful, wherever they may be. And I'm well aware of the heartfelt plea, the Romanian thing, and I'm well aware of Moscow's statement and the Serbian Church's statement about ministering to their own wherever they may be, and not allowing Constantinople to try and mop it all up. I mean, I speak very bluntly because I'm an ordinary, you know, I mean, but that's what this is all about, and I understand that. But alongside of that duty of care for one's own, Russian, Romanian, wherever it might be, must be a heart of mission for the people who actually live in the country that you've moved to. Now, if we had that heart for mission, we could have a conception of the church that was what I call multivalent. You could have churches that were predominantly made of immigrants, so you were predominantly using Church Greek or Church Slavonic or whatever. And they would happily, as indeed they do now, live alongside churches that had more converts, that were using English predominantly, and so on and so forth. But at the moment, I'm speaking now about Antioch, which I know, but also the Greek and Russian scene here. These two realities of the church are very much separate. So they need to be more mixed. So just like you had a liturgy in the Pokrov on Sunday in English, why not do a liturgy once a month in English?